Welcome to the September 18th, sorry.
Happy Constitution Day.
Yeah. Thank you. Welcome to the September 18th, 2023 regular business board meeting of the Lower Merion Board of School Directors. This meeting is being live streamed and video recorded with sound for public broadcast. All participants joining via the webinar will need to use the chat feature, which will be enabled during audience recognition. If you are attending this meeting in person, you should be aware that other attendees may be recording the meeting as permitted by the Sunshine Act. This means, however, that any remarks that you may be making on the side may be recorded by other members of the public during the meeting. The board believes it's in its best interest and the best interests of its students to hear comments from district residents. An opportunity will be given later in the meeting for public comment, both in person and through the chat feature, which will be read by our solicitor. Please remember to be civil, and that civility is very important, and that we are role modeling for our students. So we ask for no disruptive comments when other individuals are engaged in public participation. And with that, we will kick off the meeting. I'm going to ask Dr. Yanni to present his superintendent's update.
Good evening, everyone. I know I could feel some of you looking at me when I got up, like, is this going to be a long presentation? I promise it won't be, but it will be informative. So I wanted to provide an update on some of our wellness initiatives. So tonight, the board is being asked to approve our health and safety plan. The main thing that we want you to know about the health and safety plan is this is a procedural vote. It's required by the Department of Education for the extent of time that we have federal stimulus dollars that have been provided from the federal government. So our plan is based upon the guidance that we get from the Montgomery County Office of Public Health, and the MCOPH gets their guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So if you go through the plan and you're reading it, you will notice some subtle changes. It's a little less restrictive than the plan has been in the past, but largely just a procedural requirement tonight. Messaging for healthy start times. We've been very intentional about not really putting out a lot of information about healthy start times now because the school year just started, and we wanted to make sure that we get through the month of September before we start talking about September 2024. You'll see there the graphic that Ms. Buckman's department put together, and so starting in October, there will be some information coming out from the district about healthy start times. We're going to be surveying students and staff. We'll be surveying also families as well. We want to get some baseline data from our students on their sleep habits and their sleep hygiene now before we change our start times so that we can evaluate the change in the future. And I really want to give credit to both our students and our administrators in our buildings, off and away, as we continue to think about how to support healthy habits among our students, making sure that they are not using their phones all day long. We're in the implementation phase. We're not perfect, but I do believe it's making a difference. And I mentioned last week I was sort of chided by one of our students at Harriton because I was standing talking to members of the leadership team, and I had my phone out. I was not using it, but simply holding it, and the student reminded me that the protocol or the new practice is off and away. When I start my superintendent's advisory teams over the next couple of weeks, both healthy start times and off and away will be topics that either I'll be bringing forth to talk with the students, or the students will be bringing forth to talk with me, I'm sure. full day kindergarten. So today was our 10th day of school. So we now have our 10th day enrollment. The Montgomery County Planning Commission, they're going to utilize our most current data to update our enrollment projections. We're going to take a look at their accuracy to date with the old or with the previous enrollment information so that we can lay out a coherent projection of the staff that we're going to need based upon projected enrollment. Now that we have students back in our buildings, we are developing a schedule to revisit each of our elementary schools, examining available instructional spaces, and then we'll revisit our recommendations in October. I anticipate either at the curriculum committee or at the education committee, Dr. McGloin and I will be coming back either affirming these recommendations or making some new recommendations to the board. So we know that Belmont Hills, Gladwin, and Penn Valley, we know they have space available and there's no modifications needed. We know there's space available at Kinwood, but we're most likely going to be recommending some modifications. And then we talked about Penwyn and Marion not having sufficient space. So we have to really think outside of the box and creatively in those buildings. So just a reminder that next month we'll be bringing back much more robust information. And finally, the last part of my superintendent's report is a special acknowledgement tonight. So the Pennsylvania School Board Association honors directors for length of service on the school board. The first School Boards Association in the United States is PSBA, and they have they've been in existence for more than 125 years. PSBA knows that school directors are ethical, principled individuals that have a deep desire to serve. And tonight, we're very pleased to present this certificate of appreciation to Ms. Robinson from PSBA for her years of service to the Lower Merion School Board. Countless hours a month go into school board service, so we thank not just Mrs. Robinson, but all of our school board directors for their service, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Yanni. As we move forward with our agenda, first I wanted to take a moment and note Ms. Simmons, welcome back. Thank you for your second year as student representative from Harriton. And unfortunately, Maya Niazi is not here this evening, but she will be our student representative from Lower Merion High School. The students are identified in cooperation with the principals of each of the high schools. So welcome and thank you. And I also wanted to take the time here in advance of some of our committee reports to talk about filling the seat that Mr. Mooring, who's not over there, has vacated as of the end of August. And I want to thank especially the community response and the interest of those who were submitted resumes and letters of interest for the position. We had a total of 9 individuals note their response. And it was really quite a wide breadth and depth of experience in terms of the types of backgrounds that these individuals have, whether it be within the education realm, legal, real estate and facilities management, and the corporate and community service world. And also a really deep and broad commitment to community service in general or overall within our community, which I think is such an important part of what we all do. As I said, there were 9 candidates. I'm going to read the names. They're in alphabetical order. Lorraine Carter from Ardmore, Ross Cohen from Ardmore, Beckwith Cromer from Bala-Cynwyd, Virginia Davis from Wynwood, David Fetterman from Penn Valley, Rahul Kathari from Haverford, Sarah Thomas of Wynwood, Rainey Truscott of Haverford, and Hame Vu of Bala-Cynwyd. So to provide a little background and my perspective here, PA school code requires that we fill this position within 30 days of a vacancy. And that is true whether it's a 2-year position or, filling out the role, whether it would be for 2 or 3 years or for 2 or 3 months, which is the situation that we're in. And I personally believe that process of the type of individual that we would be looking for is different because it is only a 2 to 3 month period than if we were looking for someone to fill a spot for a longer period of time. Based on the research I've done on other districts and how this is sort of across the Commonwealth addressed or put forth, that many districts go in one of 2 different directions. One would be to appoint a former board member. The benefit of that is that the learning curve is already there, and that there wouldn't be a large learning curve. And I think that in a situation where it's a very short period of time, that's a very important point. Another direction that some districts go to is looking at who is on the ballot because we are post the primaries, so who received votes during the primary and that are on the ballot for November. Personally, I'm less comfortable with that idea because I don't want to ever give the impression that we're putting a hand on the election and impacting that in any way. So given these those thoughts on that, of the 9 individuals that submitted interest, I personally would recommend that we consider David Fetterman. As a previous board member, he served 2 cycles ago prior to being on the board, so I think his service was up in December of 2019, and I open it up to hear from other individuals on the board on your thoughts.
Lucy, I think I agree with everything you said. So just to put it out there that this is really just for more dialogue than anything else. First of all, in looking at everybody's resumes and cover letters, like, wow, we always know we have an amazing community. But then when you open up, these opportunities open up to the community and you see the skill sets that are out there, you really are just unbelievably impressed with who comes in. So I think any one of these people would be such an amazing person to sit on the board. So we're lucky, and, champagne problem. Oh, we have so many great candidates. The only thing that I wanted to kind of throw out there as an alternative thought process in choosing a person is my experience with Narberth Council. There, at times, Narberth would have openings on their council because people left early and it was a short period of time. And Narberth Council would go through a process, and their process is different than ours, but they would publicly interview people. But what I found from that process is it really opened up new people to being a part of the community in different ways. Only one person got those spots most of the time, but the other people that went for that position learned about a whole different myriad of ways that they could engage with the community. So yes, there is going with somebody who has the experience because it's such a short period of time, very valid reason. The tricky part about the political process, which I can completely agree and have to be honest with you, probably 15 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that, but in this day and age in elections, it does make me nervous. But the third option is to look at somebody with skill sets that we will be lacking in the board or don't have in the board as is, and give them a chance to say, hey, come on the school board. You are here, you are a member of our community, you have all the skills to be at it, but also you get an exposure to what it's like to be on the school board, and maybe in 2 years you'll run for a seat, and just kind of almost open our doors a little bit wider and get a larger mix of people looking at, hey, maybe school board is something I'd like to do. So just throwing it out there. And when I look through the resumes, I feel like this is, again, champagne problem, so many good resumes. But Catharty is really a name that resonated for me because his experience with the Police Touch Museum, his experience engaging in the community, and the skill sets he was bringing to the table that are very different than all of us on the board. So just throwing it out there. Anybody else?
Thank you. Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. When I looked at the resumes, I felt the same way about Cathari. I felt that, that he brought a different perspective than we've had and may have in the future. One reason that I'm going to say that I rethought about it and feel that David Fetterman would be a better fit for now is that there's some required training that you need to go through, some required, competency in terms of what we are allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. That aspect of it is available with David, in that he's gone through the training. The position hasn't changed and the rules haven't changed that much.
For a 2-month position, are you obligated to go through all of the training? I'm sorry, I feel like I should know this, but I'm asking anyway. I'm going to look at you because you're the one who.
I don't believe so.
There
Because
is,
I was just, because the training his is probably dated, not to be pedantic on this, but I will.
well, I mean, I can speak to the legal orientation. Yes, there are some basics that every one of you, I think, can recall being oriented on with respect in terms of the role between the board and the superintendent, the Sunshine Act requirements, and any confidentiality of executive sessions, what can and can't be discussed in executive sessions, what can be known about employee records. There's a whole host of legal orientation, and that's just the legal orientation. And then there's also, and I defer to Dr. Yanni on this, but there's also learning about budgets and facilities, and it's quite a bit of information, as all 8 of you will recall.
I'm sorry, my question was, does a person who is just filling a seat for this short period of time have the obligation to take the online PA training at the end, before the end of this period? That was my actual
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
Now thanks for sharing though.
A long answer to a question you didn't ask. No, I don't believe so.
I will just say, we're going to start the budget process soon, as Mr. Roos said. There's policy work that needs to be done. We'll be talking about our movement forward, exploring full-day kindergarten, healthy start times, continue to look at fields. So there's a lot of issues, large and small, that are imminent.
Any other board members want to speak up?
I'll jump on and just sort of, to that effect, say that there were a lot of very impressive people, and I find myself sitting here struggling with the idea that we can't pick a lot of people, also struggling with the idea that we would pick our colleagues, is also just sort of a cognitive dissonance. But I'm thinking back to just the sheer amount of information that you have to receive to onboard to do this job. And I mean, I'm thinking about like the email problems that we still have, having done this job for years now, and just it would be a very big ask for somebody to get up to speed that had no experience in that realm to then roll off less than 3 months later. And so that is just weighing very heavy in my consideration.
I would agree with that. If it was longer, there were so many good, reading it, I was just like overwhelmed a little, because it was just like, which one do you choose? But, the onboarding and the exponential growth you need to do to do this job properly, and the history, you don't, it takes a while for you're sitting in meetings and going, really, I've never heard this before, kind of, that, that this person would come in and, if we chose, somebody who's already been on the board before, they would kind of have a little bit of a history in the back of their mind and be able to, contribute to the conversation, as opposed to just be, I need to look into this after this meeting to understand this a little bit more. So I think we would get more of a contributor to the meetings than somebody who was just sitting there kind of overwhelmed for 2 months. So, not to say that that would happen, but, but yeah, I could.
Go ahead.
Ken, are there rules around abstentions and what your motivation to do so has to be? Does there have to be some sort of conflict or of interest, or can one just vote abstain?
Yeah, as you note, there are required abstentions under for financial conflicts of interest. There's really nothing you can do. There's no sanction for a board member just declining to vote on something, so.
Okay.
And if you were going to, well, you wouldn't be able to, whoever you appoint tonight wouldn't be able to be seated tonight for voting anyway, but that would be customary if, that person would abstain, if they were able to vote tonight.
Okay.
So, no, as a practical matter, there's no obstacle to a board member just choosing to abstain on a vote.
All right, thank you.
So as a follow-up to that, just for information, once the board votes tonight, and it's not going to be now, it's going to be with the voting portion, I just wanted to make sure we had the conversation prior to public comment. But once the person is appointed this evening by the board, the next steps are then that person needs to fill out a financial interest disclosure form. And once that is submitted, the person, that individual will be sworn in via a notary or magistrate at some point in the next few days, and then would then become a voting member of the board. So, yes, Ms. Chirac?
I just have one question. Is the vision that whoever we swear in will assume the committee post that Sean held previous?
Yes, so that we would still have 4 individuals on every committee, and that would preclude needing to do a complete revamp for the last 2 months of people's committee assignments.
Thank you.
And those committees are policy, curriculum, and equity and anti-racism.
Committee seats, not chairships, correct?
Correct. Correct. He was in fact co-chair. He did co-chair curriculum and equity and anti-racism, but the benefit of having a co-chair system is that then there still would continue to be a chair without Mr. Mooring. And I think that it would make most sense to just have a single chair until the new board is elected and sworn in. Any other questions or comments? Great. Okay, so why don't we move on with our committee reports. Again, I just wanted to have that conversation prior to the voting portion of our agenda. And so we have 3 committee meeting reports this evening. Ms. Kalish, if you could do the
Excuse me,
curriculum.
I'm sorry, Miss.
Do we want Ms. Simmons first?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Of course.
It's not on your sheet, that's my error, but.
I apologize. Ms. Simmons?
Good evening, everyone. Harridan started off the year with freshman and new student orientation on August 30th. To commemorate their first day, Senior Sunrise was held for the seniors on the turf on September 5th. On Friday, September 8th, Harridan hosted Ram Day, which is an opportunity for students to sign up for clubs and activities in the upcoming school year. And Lunch and Learn started on Wednesday to the enjoyment of much of the student body. Looking forward, on Thursday, September 21st, Harridan will host its open house, and on September 28th, the IB Family Social will be held. Student Council will be hosting their icebreaker for new students and freshmen on September 29th, and this year's homecoming will be held on October 14th. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Simmons.
Thank you. The Curriculum Committee met on September 7th. We heard requests for music production software for digital music classes at LM and Harridan and mobile interactive panels for the Harridan Library. The committee recommended those items for approval to the full board. Next, we received a presentation on the transition to Schoology, which was recapped at the Education Committee of the full board last week. Finally, we heard an update on the full-day kindergarten timeline that Dr. Yanni was just speaking about. The board approved an updated enrollment study by MCPC at the August 21st meeting. This will be compared with the district projections beginning October 1st. School visits to evaluate facilities needs are ongoing. Belmont Hills, Gladwin, and Penn Valley have space and require no modifications to house full-day kindergarten. Kenwood has the space, but the district is recommending a facilities upgrade, and Penwyn and Marion require either facilities modification or program relocation to run that program. The next meeting of the Curriculum Committee of the board will be Wednesday, October 4th at 8:30 a.m. in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kalish. Ms. Robinson, for the policy report.
The policy committee met in this boardroom in person, and the meeting was live streamed for concurrent viewing and recorded for later viewing. Updates and overviews were discussed. We received an update regarding the student wellness policy and information on how policy material and new policies are communicated to LMSD's new hires as well as continuing employees. First readings, policy 151, student activities. The purpose of the revisions was to address rule changes governing name, image, and likeness for student athletes. The intent is to ensure that any student's name, image, or likeness agreement does not violate PIAA rules or otherwise compromise their participation in athletics. This will also begin a more comprehensive review of the policy. Policy 004, formulation and adoption of policies. This policy's proposed revisions are to streamline non-substantive changes such as changes to pronoun usage or job titles within LMSD policies. We then discussed administrative regulations, AR 124, extracurricular and co-curricular activities, and AR 136, home education. The revisions to these ARs are in relation to law changes relating to affording certain public school-based opportunities to home-educated students. We then discussed future revisions to policy 007 regarding board meetings and policy 810, student transportation. These changes will be forthcoming in the months ahead. The next meeting of the policy committee will be on October 6th at 8:30 a.m. in this room.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Mr. Lee for the facilities.
Thank you. This is a report of the Facilities and Purchasing Committee meeting from September 14th, 2023. The following items were discussed by the committee and recommended for approval at tonight's meeting. We recommended the list of district bills for approval. We reviewed and recommended the following items from the purchasing report for approval. $176,750 for landscaping buffer designed in collaboration with Wynwood Civic Association to support the proposed Arnold Field lighting project. The project includes newly proposed dense buffer along the property line parallel to Owen Road, as well as previously designed plantings near Chichester Lane and Fairhill Road. Due to the scope of the project was advertised for public bid, and LMSD received 2 bids. Gessler Construction submitted the lowest bid, which includes the new plantings along Owen Road and the previously designed plantings identified as bid alternates. Total project bid was $176,750. $11,154 for a 4-month backhoe rental to be used for snow removal from Cherry Valley Tractor. $16,687.58 for purchase of Clear Touch interactive flat panels to be used in common educational spaces at Harriton High School from Flux Space. We recommended the following district contracts for approval. New contracts with the following. Ableton for their Push 2 product, which is a multi-purpose audio input tool to support the new high school music studio curriculum, for a contract not to exceed amount of $14,246. Health Advocate Solutions for consortium pricing for services related to its employee assistance program at a cost of $1.70 per employee per month. RGS Associates, formerly known as Glack & Thomas Panzak, to provide landscape architecture and design services. This agreement replaces the former agreement with Glack & Thomas for the same services. Renewals with the following. Naviance for their grades 6 through 12 career and college application software for $22,462. A 3-year renewal with Cooter for career guidance and awareness application suitable for pre-K through 5 for $8,000 per year. Beata for as-needed substitute registered nurse support at a rate of $55 per hour. Achieve $3,000 for an online differentiated instruction tools to support literacy for special education students for $19,003. A 2-year renewal of bus status software by Rally to provide notifications to parents and students of any bus delays at a discounted rate of $6,650 per year. a 5-year maintenance and service renewal with RF design and integration for services related to the two-way radio system that integrates each school bus with central dispatch for $4,908.75 per year. Kronos software for their staff time management software at a cost of $73,126 for software license renewal, plus $27,750 one-time cost to upgrade to the latest version of the software. There were no change orders related to the construction of Black Rock Middle School this month. Building finalization projects continue, with the main focus being the lighting automation system, which has not been operating some zones according to the program time schedule. School operations and classes are not impacted. The construction manager is working with the vendor and LMSD operations staff to troubleshoot the issues. To date, there have been $1,650,723 in unresolved claims made by contractors and $472,076 in unresolved claims made by LMSD, which will both be resolved through a dispute resolution process. Including all disputed claims, the total project cost is $105,933,925, which is higher than the $101,563,038 projected cost at the time of contract award, but less than the $114,062,616 original construction estimate. To date, there have been $5,246,768 in total change orders on the construction project, the bulk of which has come from 4 causes: 42% resulting from additional work related to soil excavation and site preparation, 17% resulting from omissions or errors made by the architectural firm in the building design, 21% resulting from omissions or errors made by professionals and subconsultants related to the building design, and 10% resulting from school district requests. The next Facilities and Purchasing Committee meeting will be on Thursday, October 12th, 2023 at 8:30 a.m. in this room. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Next, there are no additional agenda items, so we will move on to audience recognition. So at this time, we will hear public comment. If you would like to speak at tonight's meeting and have not yet signed up with Ms. LaPera, please do so now. For those of you joining via the webinar, the chat feature will now be open and you'll see a 10-minute timer up here on your screen. You can submit your comments and/or questions via the chat feature. Please be sure to begin with your full name and where you reside within the district in order for your comment to be shared. That is true for both in-person and online comment. And please note that a specific address isn't necessary, just a neighborhood within the district. Ms. LaPera, do we have any in-person comments for tonight's meeting?
Yes, we do. We first have Jeffrey Brodsky, then Ruth Jenkin, James McLaughlin, and Deb Robbins.
Good evening. Jeffrey Brodsky. I live at 110 West Montgomery Avenue. It's just down the road here by the Exxon station. My daughter Aria is starting her 2nd grade here at Penn Valley Elementary School. And I'm here tonight to address my concerns about our bus stop along Montgomery Avenue. It's a very busy road. The traffic is very fast, and there have been a lot of accidents in front of my house, even in the past 12 months that I've lived there. I've been communicating with the transportation directors, which has not, asking them to move the bus stop. Currently, the bus stop is at 34 West Montgomery Avenue, which is about 100 yards down the road. It's a very narrow strip of sidewalk. With about 2 feet of grass between where we're standing and the roadway, where cars are driving very fast by. I don't feel very safe waiting at this bus stop with my daughter every morning and waiting to meet her in the afternoon, and also having to have her walk back to our house. All last year, her bus picked up right at the driveway by our house, which was very convenient. We were able to stand away from the roadway. It was very safe. I don't feel that the current bus stop is very safe for us, and so I'm here pleading and asking anyone in this room if they could help me navigate or help me communicate with the transportation department to see if we can move the bus stop to a safer location. In fact, the PennDOT School Bus Driver's Manual, Section C4, mentions that that students should wait at least 10 feet from the edge of a highway at our approved bus stops in order to safely wait for and board their bus. At this location, 34 West Montgomery Avenue, it is impossible to stand 10 feet away from the roadway. And so my wife and I are very concerned. We don't want anything to happen. And pedestrians have been struck by vehicles right by our house recently, as in a couple of weeks ago. So really, if anyone here can help us get the bus stop moved closer to our house, I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brodsky.
I brought the Lorax, speaks for the trees. My name is Ruth Jenkins. I live in Wynwood. We also have a traffic issue in Wynwood, right next to the high school where I live on Owen. And a letter was sent to superintendent from our neighborhood. I'm sure that you received it. With the traffic, the students speeding. We have a lot of young children at bus stops in the morning, and the high school students are speeding through the neighborhood looking for parking spaces. They also come out at lunchtime or periodically during the day to change their cars out of the 2-hour parking. And looking for parking spaces and driving around the neighborhood. The other thing that they do is they leave their trash from their lunches that they've purchased at McDonald's or at Wawa on our sidewalks and in our streets. I think that the other concern that I have is that the school is not safe. The school is not a school in which the students come in and stay there. They leave and they wander around and they do what they want, and then they come back and they come easily in and out of the building. On the side door over here, they call their friends on the phone and somebody comes down and opens the door, and I see them going in and out all day long. Someday there's going to be a serious situation, and I'm concerned about somebody having a gun in their car and coming back into the school. And I think that we need to have a much more safe situation in our high school here. The other thing that I wanted to encourage was that no decisions about Oakwell be made until our new board is sworn in, and giving them a chance to give their opinions and their thoughts and their research on preserving Oakwell for future students, for future generations, instead of just the students now playing sports on that property. Think about the inheritance that you're going to be giving to the future students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
James McLaughlin, Deb Robbins, Isabel Melvin.
Yes, good evening. My name is James McLaughlin. I live on Loves Lane in Woodwood. I understand at the recent Facilities Committee meeting of the school board, a resident asked about bus handling issues at the polo field. He had apparently seen signs posted at the field by concerned neighbors. All of the members of the school board clearly knew about the situation, but this was the first this resident or I had heard of it. My question is, why has this subject not been discussed openly? Has it been discussed in executive session? The Sunshine Act gives 7 reasons why matters can be discussed in executive session, but this issue would not be covered by any of them. What else are you discussing that we might not be aware of? I think transparency is what is needed here, and as always, I am concerned about Oakwell, past, present, and future. Thanks very much.
That question was asked at the facilities meeting and answered at the facilities meeting. That was not a school district proposal. That was a requirement by Haverford Township. So they're mandating a bus pull-off.
Good evening, Deborah Robbins from Villanova.
I just want to very briefly comment on Oakwell. You've all heard the numerous arguments over and over again. So, I come representing, a large number of people in the community who do not want to let this, issue fall by the wayside. It is still important to them, and, mistakes were made in the past. There are a lot of things we didn't appreciate in 2018. We hadn't had a pandemic. We hadn't had the hottest summer in the history of man. We probably knew less too about mental health for adolescents and so on and so on. You've heard all the arguments. So what I ask is that you think about some words that were important. And I give a lot of credit to all of my fabulous English teachers at Welsh Valley and Harriton who taught me to appreciate things like this, what we didn't know about before. Maya Angelou said, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better, and forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it." And I will add that a country singer said, "I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then." Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robbins.
Isabel Melvin, Holly Manzoni, and, sorry, I can't read the first name, but Lazar is the last name, and then Adrian Seltzer.
Isabel Melvin, Winwood. Thanks again for being here. You all work really hard, and it's not unrecognized. As a Lower Merion School District taxpayer, I desire prudent spending and equity and fairness for every student in the district. I'm protesting a Lower Merion School District plan to construct 3 playing fields at historic Oakwell. This Lower Merion, in addition to taxpayer waste of $8 million per field, this Lower Merion School District plan disrupts the natural lands of historic Oakwell, sends chemicals and stormwater in 3 watersheds, destroys heritage trees directly and indirectly by disturbing shallow horizontal root systems. I'm happy to hear the Lower Merion Democrat Party wants to preserve historic Oakwell. While our beloved Lower Merion School District employees work hard for us, Lower Merion School District lacks the experience and professional training to protect this environmentally important historic site. Lower Merion School District is not in the historic preservation business. The cost of deferred and regular maintenance of a 14-acre historic 10,500 square foot mansion and surrounding historic landscape should be prohibitive. How about putting that money towards maintenance of existing fields instead? Moreover, the state of Pennsylvania Supreme Court deemed Pennsylvania's school system of funding unconstitutional. Pretty soon, our funding might be decreased. Let's prepare now for those rainy days. Some folks on Lower Merion School Board worry that it's not equitable that Black Rock Middle School does not get 3 more playing fields like other schools in the district. This is old world thinking. First world problems. Let's put the money saved on real equity for Lower Merion students. Robotics club counselors for underserved kids who get pigeonholed into non-academic tracks. Individual development plans for all kids so no one falls through the cracks. Let's sell this property with preservation assessments, easements, and put the funds towards improving existing playing fields in the township and true student equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Melvin.
Good evening, I'm Holly Manzoni of Wynwood. As Isabel mentioned, indeed, the Supreme Court did say that education funding in Pennsylvania is unconstitutional. Now, there was no appeal to that, which means that the ruling stands, and it's now in the hands of the legislature, who is actively working on it now. They've been holding meetings. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how that's going to affect us, and it'll probably take years before anything happens. But it is a serious problem. And I think it's a problem that largely comes down to wants versus needs. We see districts, many districts in Pennsylvania, some of them not far from here, that have serious needs. They have asbestos, they have lead in their pipes, they can't afford enough teachers, all kinds of problems. And then here we are in Lower Merion. We have been singled out for our excessive spending here in Lower Merion. In fact, we have become the poster child for extravagance in school funding. This isn't fair. And I think that if you consider another school not far from here, Masterman in Philadelphia, Masterman is rated as the #1 high school in the state of Pennsylvania. And yet a couple years ago, its teachers had to be protesting over the asbestos in the school. I know a family who sent their children to Masterman, and I don't know if it's still true, this is a few years ago, they had to buy their own textbooks. This is right next door in a neighboring district. And yet here we are in Lower Merion looking around to try and find out where are we going to put these accessory fields for one of our middle schools. I think the question isn't where do we put the fields, it's why do we put the fields. These are wants. They are not needs. We do not need accessory fields for what the school code says for proper school use. We want these fields because it would be more convenient. I think that it's time that Lower Merion kind of push the reset button. I'm hoping that Dr. Yanni will help with that. And we shift our priorities to creating the #1 school district in the state. Let's take a page out of Masterman's book and focus on academics instead of trying to turn this school district into an athletic facility. We, for years, have been saying, save Oakwell, save Oakwell. I say tonight, sell Oakwell. Sell Oakwell and use those proceeds to improve our existing fields and to prepare everything we can prior to whatever happens with the equity issue so that we will be prepared and we will flourish. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manzoni.
I'm sorry, is it Adolia Lazar? Okay, sorry, it's hard to read the handwriting. And then we have Adrian Seltzer, and then Lisa Prosnitz.
Good evening. This is Orshaya Lazar from Miriam. Equity has been mentioned previously as one of the justifications for the sport fields, but we all know that all our schools are different. We have different facilities and different programs in different schools. Not one of the very good examples is the IB program in Harrington, which doesn't exist in Lower Merion High School. So we don't have to have all schools with the same facilities. We also know that Black Rock Middle School added more fields to existing fields without significantly increasing the enrollment. Enrollment barely changed in the last couple of years, and the existing enrollment predictions show either a slight increase or some of them show a decline in the future. So we should consider that when we are making decisions. Sport participation has been declined for field sports in the last 10 years, and several sport teams have been combined previously. And that might continue in the future, so that's another consideration when you're making decisions about adding more fields. If we're talking about equity, equity does matter. We also need to consider climate change, which impacts disadvantaged communities much more than or wealthy neighborhoods. So if you're considering disadvantaged neighborhoods, they're going to be more impacted by climate change. They're going to be impacted by extreme heat, flooding, air quality considerations, and many other impacts from climate change. As I work for the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for Urban and Community Forestry, I have regular discussions and meetings about climate change and its impact. Pennsylvania is losing its forest cover, so is Lower Merion. We have lost 12% of our tree canopy over the last 12 years or so. We need to make sure that we are conserving, preserving our mature trees. We can't plant our way out of climate change. And if you're planting new trees, please make sure that the trees are planted correctly according to industry standards. Please use specifications from ISA ANSI standards and ISA best management practices so they have a chance for living and thriving in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lazar.
Adrian Seltzer, Winwood. Hi, everyone. As I was listening to your discussion about someone to replace Sean, I didn't even think about the committee assignment. But saying that Sean was on the Equity Committee and Curriculum Committee, one of the 9 people that applied is like one of the premier people on equity and inclusion and curriculum in the township. And I think that even though it's only going to be a few months, I think her input would be something that would benefit the whole school district. And she is more than qualified to do any training in the necessary time. I'm talking about Lorraine Carter. And I really think that you should consider her. And that's all I'll say on that. Also, of course, save Oakwell, sell it, do something. But I don't know if you understood or sell it, but it's almost 30% of the tree canopy in Lower Merion that has been reduced. And we don't need any more trees cut down. And I think that's it. I'm not even going to take 3 minutes. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Seltzer.
Lisa Prosnitz in Penn Valley. Just want to thank you all for being here as always. I was thrilled to hear that there are so many candidates, and I'm hoping that some of them will run for school board in the future, and can very much appreciate where Adrian's coming from, although I've got a different perspective. I do want to encourage you to vote for David Fetterman. He has a proven track record of advocating and supporting all of our students across the board. His familiarity with high school healthy start times and full-day kindergarten will be invaluable in helping to move those initiatives forward. And I think we're at a point where we could really use that support. I'm also curious, and I don't know if I can get an answer now, about the money for the landscaping for Arnold Field. I wanted to confirm that if there was construction for lights and a shift in the field, that landscaping, I'm assuming, would stay, that would not be. All right, that was it. Okay, thank you, guys. And again, under 3 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Prosnitz.
And that's it for the in-person comments.
Mr. Roos, could you please read the comments on chat?
Yes, happy to. Jelani Wilson from Ardmore. My daughter, who is an elementary school student in the district, began expressing alarm and discomfort at the presence of a Lower Merion Police Department officer at her school 2 years ago. She told me that she sees him there quite often and she doesn't know why he's there, but he has a gun and his presence makes her uncomfortable. Since then, I've been trying to find answers as to the purpose of his presence and why parents were at a minimum not informed, but more pointedly, why parents have not been given the option to have a cop-free education. I've engaged with other parents I know who have children at the school. All were shocked and dismayed to learn this and didn't understand its purpose or necessity. It was only recently that I've been able to get any concrete information, including the officer's name, which is troubling in the least. After a discussion with an administrator, I've come to learn some contradicting things that need to be confronted by the district. Firstly, I was told that the purpose of Officer Swain's visit is to, quote, build positive relationships, end quote, between the police and school staff / faculty and students. This has a superficial level of legitimacy that belies the fact that LMPD has a well-earned reputation for racial profiling Black residents, exemplified in a traffic stop in January that resulted in a Black woman being tased over a taillight. Among other situations and elements that have left my daughter feeling alienated and invisible in her time at Lmsb, to such an extent she didn't want to come back for third grade, the presence of Officer Swain is particularly egregious. The administrator I spoke to made several admissions about this and that the district needs to answer for. First, there is indeed a particular negative impact on Black and brown children by these visits. Second, that faculty and staff are routinely informed of these visits in an attempt to blunt that impact, but not parents. Third, that they themselves have misgivings about these visits. Through this conversation, it became all the more clear that the only real purpose of Officer Swain's presence is an attempt at public relations charm offensive for the benefit of LMPD. To be clear, it doesn't matter how nice or friendly Officer Swain or any LMPD officer is. The problems of racist law enforcement are institutional and structural and are as true locally as they are nationally. By actively choosing to engage in this practice, LMSD is willfully contributing to this and then leaving families uninformed about it, all of which is beyond unacceptable. At a minimum, parents should know and have a means to opt their children out. As a resident who has been the subject of harassment by LMPD and has also had family members mistreated by their officers, I do not want any LMPD officer interacting with my child without explicit parent consent. The denial of that consent is nothing short of actively harmful. This is also an example of the many ways in which institutional racism thrives within the district behind smiling faces and lofty overtures to a meritocracy that is nothing of the sort. There is more to the comment. I am aware that the entire contents of the chat was in the form of a letter that was read aloud to the entire school board, so the reader can know that did occur. Next comment is Wilson Chong Balakinwood. Whenever you have one party making decisions, you will get extremism. This school board is extreme. 5 school board seats are being voted for in November. Vote these people out and bring some balance to this board. Next is Amy Noor, Penn Valley, parent of 3 LMSD graduates. I hope you will appoint David Fetterman for the short-term school board director position. He is ready to go with his 4 recent years as a school board director and doesn't need months to learn the ropes. He was always diligent and well-informed during his prior school board term, an independent thinker and hard worker. Thank you for your consideration. Karen Fox, Narberth. I would like to contribute my preference for temporary school board director. David Fetterman is the best choice. He has the experience. He will be a positive addition to the board. He's aware of all issues and concerns. He's a team player, and there's no onboarding involved. Choosing David will be a seamless experience from start to finish. Jill Altschuler, Marion Station. Looking ahead to number 14A on the agenda, approve the ARP Health and Safety Plan. I would like to know if any of the money received has been spent on Tier 1 mental health supports and resources. The document refers to ongoing professional development in trauma-informed care and mental health warning signs, crisis response, parent guardian workshops and trainings, and existing supports, specifying counseling department newsletters at the high school level. Are there any new professional development trainings in current evidence-based Tier 1 level support? Are there ways that the student services staff at the high school level are proactively engaging with all of the students regarding mental health? I'm out of time, darn. Well, Shirley actually wasn't out of time, but she remarks are over.
The 10-minute mark.
Oh, okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Roos. Dr. Yanni, did you want to?
Thank you. To the parent that spoke about the bus issue, either after the meeting tonight or first thing tomorrow, I will get your contact information. And I believe I have some information from the Transportation Department that I think will be helpful to know. Regarding the comments about students at Lower Merion High School leaving the building and the building not being safe, last week, Mr. Johnson met with all the students. He has some staff stationed outside so that when, students are monitored, and he's preventing some students from leaving because we don't want kids, obviously, just out walking around. The high school is also reminding kids that be mindful of their speed when they're coming to school and of their trash and whatnot if they're outside. Mr. Lee touched on this, but our collaboration with Haverford, we will just be tenants there. So any work that needs to be done will be guided by Haverford. It won't be at the district's request. The unconstitutionality of the federal lawsuit. It does remain to be seen what happened there. It's in the legislature right now. I don't have a crystal ball, but things move at a snail's pace. So we'll continue to watch that, but it could have implications not just for Lower Merion, but far-reaching. I appreciate the comparison to Masterman, and this is not a point counterpoint, but I just want everyone to remember that Masterman is a selective enrollment school. So when we do comparisons, I just want us to be mindful that we're comparing apples to apples. Regarding the officer that we heard the public participation about this evening, I too received an email, and one of the things that I wrote in my response is that I absolutely want to honor the concerns of the parent, because anytime concerns are brought forth, they have to be taken seriously. But we also have to look at the safety aspects, right? So 2023, the world can be a scary place. So I'm not saying that the parent is right or wrong with their opinions, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong to have the police in the buildings. What we're going to be doing is surveying all of our schools and seeing to what extent we have officers walking around, and then we'll bring that information back. Dr. McGloin and I spoke about the next CCOB meeting focusing on mental health. I received some information from Ms. Frazier today that we'll be sharing as well, so that we make overt what the Tier 1 supports are. And, one of the things that strikes me as something very positive about Lower Merion, when you look at our student to school counselor ratios, we're one of the only school districts that I know that actually align to the ASCA model, which is the American Association of School Counselors. And so I'm exceedingly comfortable with our ratios. That does not mean that there aren't more supports and there aren't other things that we can do, but I think we have a good base, and now, we'll talk about making those supports more overt, and maybe look at some other things that we can add in to make sure that we have really good Tier 1 supports.
Can I follow up or clarify regarding the ARP and the funding? If I remember correctly, there was a survey that went out to families. That was, was one of the requirements of the funding that asked families what types of programming the district should spend that money on, and through that there was funding specifically for mental health services.
Yes, I don't have that information right off the top of my head, but we can make sure that gets circulated to the board and then also to families.
Thank you, Dr. Yanni. So now we will move on to the sort of business part of our meeting. I do want to pull the nomination and replacement of Mr. Mooring's vacancy out of the consent agenda. Are there any other items that board members would like to pull out of consent?
Yeah, I don't need to pull out a consent, I just had a question.
Yep. So let's start with pulling the one item. And so I would like to nominate David Fetterman for the position of School Board Director.
Just ask for any other nominations. There's no second required.
Got it. Are there any other nominations?
Well, given that there are no other nominations, you can ask for an approval by acclamation, which is just all in favor.
Okay, so can I have an approval by acclamation? Aye. Aye. All right. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Mr. Fetterman. You're very welcome. We will be in touch after the meeting to set up the next steps. You are welcome to join us up here if you'd like, however, not as a voting member, so I'm not sure it's so interesting here at the end of the meeting. So next, if we're going to approve tonight's agenda via consent, but first wanted to ask if there were any questions on any of the items.
Okay, now here's my chance. I too had a question on the health and safety plan, particularly on page 5, where we talked about the individuals that were specifically led as, so your co-committee lead, Ms. Schaefer, is Dr. Naray, and I know that his tenure in our district is going to end next month, and I was just wondering if there were a plan to have a new teammate to lead the charge with you. It's funny with you guys sideways today. Has it been like that?
That is something we're working on right now.
Okay.
Or otherwise, Dr. Naray will just have to serve from his new locations.
I'm sure
I'm
he'll,
fine with that. So,
I'm sure he'll love that.
Yeah, no, we're
I'm glad that
working on
that's something under consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda via consent?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Okay. So now do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Thank you. Motion passes. Mr. Roos. Mr. Roos, can you please give a report on the Sunshine Act?
Yes, board held executive session on September 11th regarding a confidential student matter, and held executive session tonight, September 18th, regarding an employee matter, regarding the labor matter, and regarding a confidential student matter.
If I could, there was a question asked about, did we speak about a non-executive session topic in executive session? And I can tell you that will never happen. We have our solicitor in executive session, and in executive session, we only talk about those topics that are, that we're able to talk about. So there was no violation.
Yes, correct.
Mr. Roos, in fact, polices us. If any of us were to speak out of turn, we stop discussion. It is, I just want to reassure the public that that is not something that happens. The Sunshine Act is a big deal for us.
Okay, so upcoming board meeting dates, which are held here in the District Administration Office boardrooms at 8 p.m. Our next two meetings are Monday, October 9th, which is the Education Committee and Supplementary Regular Board Meeting, and then Monday, October 16th is our next regular business board meeting. Committee meetings are held also here in the boardroom and also live streamed starting at 8:30 a.m. unless otherwise noted. Next up is September 27th, Wednesday is the Communications meeting at 7 p.m. That meeting will be via Zoom. October 4th is a Wednesday, is the next curriculum committee meeting. October 6th, Friday, is the policy committee meeting. October 12th is a Thursday, the facilities and purchasing. And then October 25th will be the next equity and anti-racism committee meeting at 7 p.m. That is Wednesday, but also via Zoom. Just want to note, tomorrow is the monthly interschool council meeting, 9:30 a.m. It is back in person. And then on Wednesday, Also, Wednesday, September 27th at 7:30 PM is the Committee for Special Education's, their first education series for the year. Advocacy 101, 5 tips to do now for a great school year. So I will end with, I hope you all have a great school year. I know we're in the middle of back to school night, so thank you all for your time and have a good evening. Meeting is adjourned.